Did anyone feel like 10 points was harsh for Everton?
Okay, it was a disgrace. The amount of punishment that they got. For that. I mean, they were £20 million over the limit of the FFP regulations, and they got 10. And this is the thing, right? So the Premier League, they're under threat at the moment from an independent regulator. The government are pushing this through because it's seen to be that the Premier League can't regulate themselves. They're allowing stuff like this to happen. Obviously, we've got the Man City case that hasn't been found out, and obviously the Premier League need to be seen that they can regulate themselves. So it seems like they're putting out a very, very harsh punishment to Everton as a deterrent. And in fact, in the sort of court case that they went through, they said this is a deterrent. We're giving this punishment so that other clubs don't follow this. And fair enough, right? The Premier League has put forward a lot of warnings to Everton. They said to them several times, do not go over this limit. You're going over this limit. Don't do it. And they still did. But I have to say, to punish the fans of that football club for the actions of the owners and the board that have mismanaged their club over and over and over again, I think is really...
Coming from you, I'm surprised, Josh, because you're very much by the book now. I remember the Tonali case. You were very much, rules are rules.
Rules are
shouldn't
rules.
question them.
Brian.
just had this been sitting in here for a little while, been waiting to pull this out.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Brian, because did you know that there isn't actually a lot of rules about the punishments? There isn't like a formal...
Oh, so there's
convenient.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not a one-size-fits-all system.
Unfortunately.
In which case... So they're just going to make it up as they go along then?
That's what they've done.
Which is part of the problem. So like with Manchester City, who obviously are owned by officially, you go high enough, there's ties to Barclays, who sponsor the Premier League. They might be a bit more lenient on that one then. just theorising.
Just putting it.
I don't think anyone should be punished.
Yeah.
Really. But do you know why I feel bad for Everton? And listen, I'm by no means an expert in this field, but one of the things and one of the reasons why Everton were punished was because of the spending with their stadium, right? And of course, that was their decision to go and build a new stadium. But one of the key things I think you should always look at is whether a team have gained a sporting advantage. And I get that some of the signings here and there, you could argue that the signings didn't give them a real sporting advantage.
Relegation
but when it's like the stadium, you didn't gain any sporting advantage there. Not until you move into that stadium.
Yeah, but
no player is playing on that pitch. No player is playing on that pitch and thinking it's going to be brilliant when we get into that new stadium in 2 years when my contract's up.
It's because the players that they bought were so bad that there was no sporting advantage, but they allowed them to pay for more players that they shouldn't necessarily have afforded. It's not my fault they spent 40 million on Iwobi and then he ended up not particularly doing very well long term. So it's a different conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to look at it from the teams that went down as well.
They're the ones that are suing.
And rightly so.
300 million's worth as well.
Yeah, but they feel that they had an unfair advantage and they went down because Everton were able to spend more than they were.
I mean, if
they
we're
were
being
following the
honest, it was the extra bit of quality that Everton had in those periods, and the Goodison fans, to be fair to them.
And Lampard.
So does this not make you guys a bit more worried, because Chelsea apparently have kind of admitted themselves, we've found a few little discrepancies here.
Previous ownership.
It's not our fault, don't shoot the messenger, but those guys were rubbish. What do you think of that? Because you guys will get punished way worse, because we have no doubt that Chelsea will have abused the system way worse than Everton ever could have.
Yep.
I think this is a very complicated issue, and one that will go on for a very long time. I mean, look, both of the cases for Man City and Chelsea will go on for a long time, and so we're not going to get our closure for at least 2 years for both. But
you guys should be shitting yourselves.
I think we are shitting ourselves. And do you know what? When I first saw the story, when I first saw the story, I actually thought it's a load of bollocks. There is a statute of limitation, i.e., that you can only go so far back. It's 6 years. You can only go that far and prosecute someone. So you think, okay, this has gone on a long time ago. There's only a certain amount of occurrences that go on in this time. But I have to say, when they put down that 10-point deduction, and you look at what they did, it was one breach, £20 million, right? And you look at the Man City case, which was effectively like complete deception. And if they prove that case, Man City are in very, very big trouble, because they not only have they lied about it, they've intentionally kept the case going for a very long time.
Can we just be honest at the table, though? We all know Man City and Chelsea have both done this.
Of course.
But this is the difference. This is the difference between the soft power of Man City and Chelsea and Everton, and it is that simple. The Premier League need Chelsea and Man City more than they need Everton, and that is the sad state of affairs.
Why do you think that?
Why? Well, it's just because of the fan bases and because of the money that they bring. And this is the thing. Like, this is why La Liga hate punishing Barcelona and Real Madrid.
When I look at Man City, I don't think that they are in any way a mega club. Like, they've achieved mega things.
They are.
But I don't think that they are, anyone is clamouring to watch them in the way a prime Manchester United were in the early 2000s. I don't think they have that anywhere near that level of pull in ratings.
What you're not understanding,
everyone at this table ever does a Manchester City video on their YouTube, it'll flop.
Flops.
There's no interest there in that club by comparison to, and I think Chelsea are in a different space, to be fair to them. But I'm just saying, I don't know if that'll be enough.
It's not about the fans.
Did you see?
No, I'm talking about ratings, viewings. And all
Did you see what it said in the statement from Everton? That they'll be watching with a keen interest how the other, because they know what's coming.
Yeah.
They know exactly what's coming. And people are saying, I'm sitting here being smug about it as a Chelsea fan. Of course, I'm happy that the inevitable, which I think is coming, which is a real show of big club bias from the Premier League, is going to come. We will get a points deduction, probably about 20 points, even 30 if we're proven to have done what has happened. And obviously, look, Josh knows more about it than me in terms of how far these things can go back. But even 30 points would probably be an injustice to Everton if they've been docked 10 points. That's the mad thing about it. But it will happen. We will get big club bias.
So with Manchester City, the documents that they use as a foundation to accelerate their investigation into them were stolen documents.
Yeah.
So there are problems in terms of how things are discovered before you can use them. And if they can't find out that these companies that aren't companies or whatever it was that funded them, then there is no case to answer for, which is where probably the confidence comes from. I'm speaking very allegedly right now.
And they've won a case.
Yeah, they've already won a case. So from them, they're very confident. It's not the same issue. But what we're talking about is this sort of incremental creep that every club does to kind of push the margins of their budgets on a year-by-year basis. That needs to stop regardless. So the Man City thing is a completely separate issue. And even the Chelsea thing happens so historically, you might not be able to hold them to account on that. Also, there's a massive question of previous ownership as to how much of that is then maintained.
I must admit, if I do feel like there should be some allowances made to Chelsea, if the new owners have come in and gone, fuck me, let's hold our hands up and go, we've found all this out. You guys, I think they should be given some sort of allowance of, all right, you've admitted this, you didn't do it yourselves.
Yeah, like a criminal court.
And also remember, the club before the sale was it the hands of the government? Who was the it was in the hands of them for 3 months. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but it didn't happen during that time, though.
It didn't happen during that time. But what I'm saying is there was no look into that sort of process and that false accounting and whatnot in that time. And there was, by all means, the possibility to have been able to do that, and we're being told that the owners weren't allowed to look back through the books and stuff until they'd purchased the club. So pretty much, if you accumulate the time it's taken to basically do it, at pretty much the first opportunity, I'm sure they had a week or two to mull over what they were going to do when they realised it, but at pretty much the first opportunity, we've grassed ourselves up. We've gone, look, we can see that there. So
this is the thing of like asking the question of what do you constitute as the club. So you mentioned earlier about punishing the fans is wrong, but the fans aren't the club. And so the club is whatever the name and the holding, and whoever owns it is irrelevant. If the club has made an advantage, i.e. they now have increased revenue because they won some Champions Leagues, because they bought some players with money they shouldn't have had, the club must be punished. And so I think it should work in their favour that they've presented this, but it's only a matter of time before this stuff should have been shared anyway.
Can I put a counter case to you, though, in that the board and the people that are managing the club mismanaged Everton, for example, right? And ditto for Man City, and at the time, ditto for Chelsea. They all got advantages. But Everton are still there. The ownership, the board are still there. They're still running the club and potentially operating them into the ground. If this lawsuit happens and they do get the 300 million case through, Everton are going to be in real trouble. They've got a stadium that's half built. There'll be points deductions. They'll be in real trouble, right? Yeah. And the government are talking about this quite extensively, about clubs have like a historic geographical significance to a certain area, and they're really playing that up, right? How can you punish fans that are going there week in, week out, supporting their club, when it should be the people that are running the business that are punished? So why do you not punish the people running the business? Like, why do we not say they can't be directors again, or actually give them personal fines?
Because this is a great conversation conversation about whether the owners of a football club should just be custodians of a football club rather than the owner. And the ownership model should 100% change, because you're right, they are so key to the areas as well as the economy of those areas. It's super important. But in this particular moment, they're private businesses. And so there is nothing you can actually do to protect them. And this is why Britain as a country has made such a massive effort to protect private businesses and keep owners of those businesses from prosecution. It is now worked against the fans.
Yeah.
So the fans may then have to be a consequence of all of these lack of governance for football. But you can't and also go and flip on the other side and say, what about the fans? Because it hasn't been a fan thing for over 30 years. Like, not since the 90s has it been, your local scaffolding business. The guy that runs that now owns, do you know what I mean? He builds some houses and he owns a football club and he's the local guy. Them days are way over.
This is why the people, like all of the fan groups in the Bundesliga, they laugh at us. Because they have the fan ownership of the clubs. They actually own their clubs.
And I agree. I think that's the best model by a mile.
Yeah.
When VAR was first introduced, right, we thought that it would just be used when necessary and it wouldn't interrupt the game too much, and all of a sudden it's completely absorbed the game and taken over. When the fines come through, the points deductions for City as well as Chelsea, and we've had Everton already, and the suing of other clubs because they, the club that was fined or points deducted benefited from these clubs going down and things like that, that is going to open up a massive, massive can of worms in this country in terms of that will be happening left, right and centre. It will be massive. Every single club is going to be suing. Cup finals won, Champions League spots missed out on, this team won, and a transferred player that was bought in sent them down with the goal like Tevez did back in the day.
Imagine the people who finished runners-up to Man City.
Of course.
They're going to be seriously pissed.
Liverpool lost by 1 point.
Yeah.
When it was us versus City in the final, who do we give the Champions League to there? You can't give it to City who lost.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think that's why they will start to protect those outcomes, because those sporting outcomes almost have to be different. You can only impact what happens in the future. Going back, I think, is a can of worms.
So was it unfair for Everton?
I think it's unfair, and I think it's so unfair that it will be given a less
so how many points would you say?
Is it unfair?
How many points?
Though?
No, if you think 10's unfair, how much points would you say is fair?
But is it unfair when you've beaten relegation?
2 losses.
You've beaten relegation based on the cheating. You've been cheating and you've beaten relegation. It's like what they're saying is, well, we're putting you right back in that situation because that's what you deserve.
I don't think 10 points is unfair. 6 points, for example, that's just 2 losses. That's it. Like, that can be turned around. I think they need to make an example.
It's 20 million
can be
quid.
turned around this season. I still think they get out of it.
True, no, but that's why I don't think it's that hard.
I'm not thinking about it like as in
Not in
knock
the
on
context,
Everton,
no.
but it's the fact of these. Imagine you're a fan of these clubs who've been relegated because of these advantages. Like, are they going to be thinking, 10 points is a bit harsh?
If I was Leeds, I would 100% be.
Yeah, but you can't blame other people for being shit as well, though. Let's be real. Like, you've been shit. There's no taking away from that.
Tiny. The free
That's what they're going to say to him in court.
But money helps your teams buy better
come
players.
on, you were shit.
Of course, but they were shit. Like, they were shit. That's why they were shit.
Hell.
A lot of those teams that got relegated deserve to get relegated. Let's be real.
Ange said it the other day, right? He said, I'm going to do everything I can, not to bend the rules, but I'm going to push the rules as far as I physically can on the pitch, right? And if we're naive enough to think that people in the boardrooms aren't going to do that in the Premier League, where every single £1 million makes a difference, every single small advantage makes a difference. I'm telling you now, Arsenal are doing it. Every single club are doing it. They're pushing.
Arsenal are bad for it.
To your point, though, when everyone was like, Newcastle are going to try and get Neves on loan from Saudi, let's stop this. And they put it to a vote, and fucking 7 other clubs are like, actually, we're planning on doing a bit of dealings as well. Like, it just showed the hypocrisy of the fact that Newcastle seen as like the big bad wolf when they're all at it.
No, but you get a better opportunity than anybody else.
We're pretty
you've actually
Newcastle haven't done nothing wrong.
We're looking at should we get Ronaldo, Neymar, Kante?
Who should we get on loan for 6 months?
It's pretty good, like.
Are you going to take anyone from the Saudi League? You should do.
I think Neves is looking a possibility.
I got told that wasn't happening now.
Yeah, he's trying to stay.